Blessings, everyone, and thank you for joining me. It's a real blessing, actually, to be with my two old friends, but not old, Paul and Kirsten Shaka. And thank you from the Angry Catholic, and thank you for joining me again. It's been a
Thank
long
you for
time.
having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We were looking forward to this.
Oh, good. And anything you'd like to tell everybody about what you've been doing? I know you haven't been podcasting in a while, but you're going to start doing that once again. And
Yeah, we don't know exactly how we're going to move forward, but we've taken a break. We've done, I think over 200 podcasts and special reports and things like that over the last 5 to 6 years. And it was definitely time, we needed it for our family, um, personal reasons and kind of to regroup and figure out how to move forward. We figure we've met literally hundreds of people that are like-minded and that I guess I describe it as that can't unsee it. So they've seen what's going on in the church. They recognize things. They know it's true. So we've met all these wonderful people, which has probably had been the best part of this last 5 6 years. But we really don't know how to take that network of people and do good with it and make an impact. So that's kind of we're in this regroup place, and but we don't know exactly how we're going to move forward. But that's where we're
yeah,
at.
yeah, I was talking to Paul and Kristen too, and I think sometimes people don't realize the work, the behind the scenes work that goes into a podcast. And unlike, Catholic Inc., Paul and Kristen aren't making money off this. They're losing as I did as well. They're just doing it out of love of God, love for the truth, and it's a labor. It's a
Mhm.
it's a tough job to do.
And
So, because
too, Joseph, that like and how I said that phrase, you can't unsee things. Like like you can tell after speaking with somebody, getting to know somebody, if they get it or not. And you are definitely one of the very few throughout the country, if not the globe. I mean, you can tell you get it. You've been there, you've seen it. Plus, with your experience, and there's many of those people out there. There's just not enough of us.
oh,
That can't unsee it. So you can't
Mhm.
do nothing. Like that's where we're at. Like we can't
yeah,
do nothing. It's not like we had planned to do it for a year, close up shop, move on. But you
yeah,
can't unsee this stuff. It's unbelievable.
yeah. I don't have staff. I'm my staff, and you don't have staff. So it's we
No,
we we do we
I'm
do
his
a great.
staff. Here's staff.
I'm going to start showing some slides. Just kind of jump into maybe what's been going on in the Roman Catholic Church because it's been a long time since we've spoken. So I'm going to share my screen with y'all. Can you all see this?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
I love you guys. So probably we're recording this on what, March, what's today, the 14th?
Yes.
March
March
14th.
Yeah,
14th.
14.
So probably in the Roman Catholic world, I mean, at least in the United States, um, the biggest news was the installation of Cardinal McElroy, the former Bishop of San Diego from here in California, to the most influential and powerful Catholic seat in the United States, which is in Washington, D.C. These are some photographs. These are screen captures to be more accurate of a video of McElroy leaving the half-empty cathedral there in Washington, D.C. There's his predecessor, Wilton Gregory. And I'll use the cursor here. This is probably one of the most bravest women in the world, I guess. Rachel Maria Giacomo. Is that how you pronounce her last name?
Ma- I don't know how to pronounce it either. Yes, it's Master Giacomo or
Uh,
something like that.
okay, and I'm Italian. I should know.
I I can do McElroy because I'm Irish, but
Okay, well, this is Rachel, and she is the survivor of pre-sex abuse in the Archdiocese or the Diocese of San Diego. I purposely haven't read about her case because I just didn't want to read about it. But from what I've heard, it's pretty horrific. So she was there witnessing to what had happened, and she kind of got blocked by this woman here. It was pretty obvious what happened. That, and I've since found out she works for the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., and she situated herself here in the pew. Clearly, it's an intimidation tactic from my point of view. Because Rachel is, I've gotten to know her online. I don't know her personally, but she's a pretty gentle soul. She has a very prayerful kind of approach to uh, the church and what's happened to her, not, you know, kind of the opposite of me, because if I had been there and somebody tried to block me, it wouldn't have ended, well. Yeah, here's another shot of Rachel Maria Sangiacomo. Um, they blocked her, is what they did. I think she was trying to say something to McElroy as he left the cathedral, and that's what they did right here. So
Joseph, can I jump in really quick and just
go
make an
ahead.
observation? Because I've seen these pictures like you have, and it hit me that you have this woman blocking her, essentially trying to protect the cardinal, the shepherd, right? Protect the shepherd from a woman who the only reason she's there is because she came forward and shared her horrific story to protect others so that this wouldn't happen to others. Like it's amazing to me. She's the protector. She's the one who's put herself out there to help Holy Mother Church and to make sure that no more innocent, vulnerable women are hurt. And yet they felt that she was the threat. Isn't that sad? Essentially she was protected from talking to the real threat, which is Cardinal McElroy.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this too, I was just thinking about it in terms of intimidation tactics that are used in the Catholic Church to silence um, survivors, because I think that's clearly what they were trying to do, because they were trying to stop her from speaking to him and just trying to stop her from just speaking in general. But I think people see this and recognize it for what it is. But I think also survivors a lot of times will maybe watch this and say to themselves, I don't want to come forward because look what's going to happen to me.
Sure.
And yeah, I wanted to tie this in with something that's happened since I last talked to you guys, because especially Kristen was on social media when someone from Catholic Inc. came up against me. Weren't you Catholic 5 minutes ago on a porn performer 5 minutes before that? December 31st, 2024. What a way to ring in the new year. So that was Matt Fradd from Catholic Inc., who, for whatever reason, felt the need to put that out on social media. Kristen, thank you. You came to my defense. Um, a lot of sex abuse survivors came to my defense. That meant a lot to me. But again, I think this is a different form of what happened to Rachel in Washington, D.C. These are all intimidation tactics against survivors. Speak up, and we'll put somebody in the pew between you and the archbishop so you can't speak to them, and intimidate you, or we'll go on social media and we'll try to humiliate you.
Yeah, well, once you make your living off Catholic Inc., it has to be a tough position in order to get the backing of certain bishops that you're silenced.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Matt Fradd's in a position where he can't speak out on this. Like
Well,
it's
he's interviewed Bishop Barron. Yeah.
oh, of course, and he's probably been on stages with Supich and other of these guys that we know are basic. I say all the time, they're criminals. These guys are
Yeah.
criminals. And if it wasn't for the statute of limitations, all these guys would be in jail. So they're protected in a sense, in our legal sense. But people like Matt Fradd, like they can't come out and be honest. They have to toe the line and appeal to their certain audience, but they can't have that audience without the bishops.
Yeah. Yeah. After Matt Fradd posted that thing about me, I went to his this was all on Twitter, and I went to his account and I said, "Hey, that's kind of not cool. I've been kind of through a lot in the Catholic Church. I don't appreciate you throwing my past in my face." And this was his response. "I'm truly sorry to hear that. I hope you're in therapy."
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that weird?
It's the idea, like, oh, I'll pray for you, and it's just a way to like show that you have a problem. You have the problem. It's not the
Yeah.
bishops. It's not the bishops that cover up. It's not, and it's not Matt who can't. He can't just see the reality. He has to. He has to ha- live in an alternate reality to be able to make a living and fundraise.
And I've spoken to enough people that have been through traumatic experiences, and you may think it in your head and go, this person should probably be in therapy. But you don't go up to somebody and say, you need to get into therapy. It's very paternalistic. It's very obnoxious. It's not cool. You just
He was
don't do
using it. He was using it as a put down. Let's just speak, call a spade a spade. He
the
was
thing.
using that as a put down.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it was just to shut you up. You know, that's all it was.
And
It wasn't about what he thought.
it works because I have another example. I'm trying to thread a needle here. Just block Joseph Chamber. I feel sorry for the fellow and wish him well. Do you need to tell everyone? Well, they do need to, because this is a humiliation ritual that they go to. Like I don't have a large following on Twitter. I have about 7,200 people. I mean, compared to these people, I don't. They have tens of thousands of followers. So what they do is they'll knock you like Matt did, and then it's like a feeding frenzy starts, because then their followers jump in and beat you down, and then if you try to answer or respond, they block you, and it's over.
Yeah.
It's really bad. It's not cool, but this is what they do. This is cancel culture. This is what they do. They're gonna put somebody between you and the archbishop, so you can't speak, or they're gonna do it online and you can't speak.
But one of the things, Joseph, it seems like these guys all have in common, and it doesn't matter whether it's, and I know we're going to talk about it later, like a Bishop Barron
Oh
or
yeah.
or anybody in this, Catholic Inc. Uh, they don't, they're the ones that you have to ask yourself, like, what have you done? They'll talk about how this is the worst, this was the worst thing ever in the church, and it was this, we're in a time that's we've never seen, but they've literally done nothing other than to either theologize in the case of Bishop Barron or they never dig in deep, never, like, or I haven't seen it yet. None of these guys, they won't address, they won't interview survivors,
No.
they won't have an honest talk and let people actually say what they're either feeling or thinking, or what's been done to them. They won't touch that,
No.
out of fear it'll upset their Catholic Inc. apple cart or whatever.
I'm going to get to that too. You read my mind. This is this was something that was nice that somebody wrote online about me. I won't read the whole thing, but Matt Fradd did a podcast with Jonathan Pajot, who's who's a sycophant of Jordan Peterson. He's also Orthodox, and I bumped up against him online too. And Matt Fradd, I don't understand what the appeal is with his podcast. I don't get it. So this guy wrote, Matt, I finished listening to your talk with Jay Pageau. I compared it with what Joseph normally talks about. Matt's cigar smoking, hard liquor, hipster talk on manly Jack and the Beanstalk. Joseph, real life church hurt by malicious priests and complicit laity. Enough said.
Mm.
I don't. I mean, they have a brand. I mean, he's got a huge following, Matt Fradd, and I'm amazed by the number of hits that his YouTube channel gets. But it's appealing to people. So
But it's
maybe
appealing because he made his name. I mean, he made his name addressing pornography.
Yeah.
Like that's where he made his name. He talked about it at youth conferences, men's conferences. I mean, Paul, you got to meet him. You
Yeah,
drove him
yeah. No,
around.
he was the original. I called him the porn guy, and I did. I got to meet him, I hear him speak. I read his book, which I thought was excellent. But he had this fire and a passion about that and the destruction of it. And he was pretty outspoken on that. And now silence in anything.
In a time when, just honestly, there's lots of problematic porn usage in the seminary. That when they do the surveys, it comes out that our priests aren't leading chaste lives, many of them. So it's not as if there's not stuff he could talk about and bring to light that's right around what he started doing, because he was doing good work with that, but he's veered off.
yeah, I don't know. I just read Joseph's timeline, and I will say there is something seriously wrong with modern Roman Catholics. They spend hours screaming at people who were abused by priests for simply speaking the truth. Meanwhile, they have nothing to say about those priests themselves. This is what somebody in replying to Matt Fradd. Always a good idea to block attention-seeking victims who blaspheme the church for kicks. So this is Matt Fradd's followers. I know I've got followers that I don't like, and I block them liberally. But this is, and you can't control people that follow you on the social media. But this was the temper of what I was up against. That was it. So, and this Orthodox person came to my defense. Thank you, whoever you are. St. Pell. This is what he's doing now. This is what he spends his time doing. And then let me lower it. St. Pell with the pedophile, Ridsdale, Gerald Ridsdale. I think the number's up to 69 boys who were raped by this guy. But Pell vehemently defended him, and I've done 2 podcasts on it. So
yeah, we've done a couple shows on Pell, and that he lied on 60 Minutes. I believe it was 60 Minutes Australia.
Yes.
And everybody they sainted him. They absolutely sainted this guy, and he's covered up, and now he has personal accusations against him.
Again.
Yeah.
There's a cult of Cardinal Pell in the Catholic Church that's super disturbing. I mean, he showed up at the seminary in Menlo Park, the St. Patrick's for the Archdiocese of San Francisco, and you'd think, I don't know, it was a celebrity there. It's pretty disturbing. So this was right after he got out of prison.
Well, and it's a pretty genius move, I must say, how the hierarchy has shifted the the cause, or what they're proclaiming the causes of this abuse scandal, to more of that structural institution, and not all these men that have perpetrated and covered up the abuse. And that's what Pell's a good example of that, I think. Where they won't say anything against Pell. It was everything else but Pell, and now look what's coming out now.
This was another just example of intimidation. I hate doing this, but it is getting out of control. Joseph Chambra started tweeting at me several months ago, decrying me for speaking to Bishop Barron. He told me Bishop Barron has covered up for child sexual abuses in the church. This is JD Flynn. He's not part of Catholic Inc. I like him a lot. I don't know if you guys know him. I don't know JD personally, but I've interacted with him on social media. I think the Pillar is a pretty good um, source
Mhm.
for Catholic reporting. I think they're fair, you know. I don't think they're anti-Catholic. Well, they're certainly not. They're Catholic, but I think they've reported on some stories that probably other Catholic news sources wouldn't touch. So JD wrote, couldn't you just mute him if you didn't want to hear from him? You're talking about someone who's obviously pretty wounded, right? But see, that's the point. It's you got to go through this humiliation ritual online, and that's what they do. In fact, Joseph hounded Barron. This is Bishop Barron. I, I, this is a stupid point, but somebody said something about Sinead O'Connor when she passed away. And I said, well, I did some research on her. She wasn't personally abused by a Catholic priest, but for a period of time, she was in sort of this Catholic run home for like wayward kids, or delinquent kids. And she experienced some abuse there. And I wrote, like myself, Sinead was a survivor of abuse in the Catholic Church, but you collaborate with one of the church's worst abusers, Bishop Barron. And Pajot wrote, in fact, Chambra hounded Barron through letters and by following him to his car in public. You know what? If somebody put a gun in my head, I wouldn't follow a Catholic uh, priest or prelate to a car because, I mean, he doesn't know this, but when I was a kid, I was abused by a Catholic priest in a car. So it's just not something I would do. And I don't understand why people say this stuff online. I don't know where he got it unless he got that from Bishop Barron himself. So it's bearing false witness against your neighbor. And Barron is, I would say, the fixer for the Vatican in the United States. I kind of want to get to him a little bit, but
Sure.
I think he certainly is guilty of covering up all sorts of abuse in the Catholic Church. So
Isn't it interesting, though, his tweet where it's saying that you, quote, hounded him with all these letters, but he doesn't include in there if Bishop Barron ever responded to you.
he did not, and I didn't hound him. I think looking back, I still have that letter. I probably mailed one through snail mail. I sent one as a registered letter to see if he would actually receive it. And then I was visiting some friends in Santa Barbara one summer, and Bishop Barron's address at the Chancery in Santa Barbara was public. It was on the Archdiocese of LA's website. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go over there. I'm going to drop off a copy of my letter because he never responded. I said, and then I'll call it a day. So I knocked at the door. I guess the housekeeper, whoever, secretary, somebody answered the door. I said, would you please give this to Bishop Barron? I'd really appreciate it. I want him to read it. And she said, yes, I'll give it to him, immediately. And I never I never heard. And what the letter was about, I've talked about it with you guys, was I used to go to the LA Rec all the time, and the for years the LGBT stuff got worse and worse. And then the last time I went, there was a couple of seminars that were pretty horrific. One was by a Catholic priest in the archdiocese who was talking about supposed gay children and how if somebody works in the Catholic Church or is a priest or whatever, how you can help that kid, and you do so by gaining their trust and speaking with them
Mm.
and confirming sort of their feelings, and it sounded like grooming to me. It was really
Mhm.
bad. And then they did another one with Catholic priests and a young woman who was, I guess you call it female to male, transsexual. And she had obviously had a double mastectomy. And she was getting up there and talking about um, transgenderism. And they started talking about children and confirming children in transgenderism. And I just said, this has gone way too far. And that's what I talked to Bishop Barron about because he was there at the time and he was always the headline speaker. And I thought, you have some kind of responsibility
Mhm.
to monitor, curate, whatever, what's going on here. And he never responded. Well, they did respond actually. Through in those days, through social media, people used to. Uh, uh, well, that's a different story. I'll get to it later. But go ahead. I don't want to talk too much, you guys.
Well, not what we know from the LA wreck. I mean, I don't know of, unless you've seen something. I've never heard Bishop Barron to this day rebuke anything that's gone on at the LA wreck. Not
Never,
one thing.
never.
And that's very telling right there. When you
Well,
have
these
that
guys,
debauchery going on at the, it's got to be, it has to be one of the country's largest like education conferences.
it
Being
is
in California.
for Catholics, it is the largest.
Yeah, and it's mandatory for religious educators. At least this is what I understand. It's mandatory for religious educators in California to attend. Right?
For it's
That's
depending,
I
awesome.
had heard that, yes,
you're
but
correct.
I can't
Depending
speak.
on the diocese, it is.
Okay,
Correct, correct. But these guys cover up for each other.
sure.
Mhm.
So, I go to the LA rec trying to report on what's going on, and I end up getting hollered at by this guy. Do you know who that is?
No, I
No.
can't
That's
see.
Brian Massingale from Fordham.
Oh, yes, yes. Now I know.
So here I am getting hollered at by him. This was the last time I went to the LA Rec, and that was the seminar about confirming children in a transgender identity, including surgery.
Oh,
So this is what they were promoting there, and Bishop Barron was prancing around with his goons. So he got a standing ovation at this thing, filled with DREs and priests and Catholic school teachers. So me and this one nun, little sister here, we were like, this is nuts. And I was squirming in my seat during the whole presentation. I wanted to scream. And she was sitting right behind me. When it was done, I said, "Let's go outside and we'll talk to him when he comes outside. We'll do it in a low-key manner." I was still Catholic at this time. And he was very, very rude to us. Extremely rude. That's him talking down to the nun. I cut her face off because you could see it at that point. So this is what you do if you're a squeaky wheel or you're a survivor in the Catholic Church. You get intimidated, you get hollered at, and you get humiliated on social media. So welcome, you know.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
meanwhile, Brian Massingale completely identifies very openly that he's gay, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and that just flies in the face of Catholic teaching. Like your orientation is towards heaven. We all have the same orientation towards heaven and God and living with him eternally. We don't You don't have an identity based on your sexual attractions.
Yeah. After that talk, I noticed in the hallway there was a group of gay activists from the Bay Area, very hardcore. And he went over to them, was laughing, and then he walked off with them, after hollering at me and the little nun, you
Sure.
know. So here's Barron with Dave Rubin. He has time to speak with Dave Rubin. He doesn't have time to speak with pre-sex abuse survivors.
Yep.
Is that the famous interview
That's it.
where he said he didn't want to focus on pelvic issues?
Correct. He didn't want to get on a Crusaders tank and try to overturn Obergefell. This is the one that I was talking about earlier where I got into trouble with his people. I'll talk about this. I don't care anymore. So that happened, and I wrote a column about it, and nobody had really picked up this interview that he had done. And I focused on the whole thing about I'm not getting on Crusader's tank about gay marriage. So I wrote a column about it. And in this day, in this time, I think a lot of people used to use Facebook like Messenger to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So some of his people contacted me after I wrote that article and said, "You better take it down." They threatened me. They said, "You better take it down and you better apologize to Bishop Barron for what you did." And I said, all I did was report on what he actually said. And I gave some commentary in there as well. But I thought it was very charitable what I said. I don't think I slammed him. And they threatened me. They said, "We know people that support you, and we will make sure that they no longer support you and they will come out publicly against you." That's what they said to me, these people, these goons. And I said, "You know what? I don't care. Go ahead. I'm not taking it down." And it's still up to this day. But this is the way they try to go heavy on me.
Well,
Behind the
I don't think
scenes.
people realize how charitable we're being. I don't. I think people don't even realize like the things we've seen, the conversations we've had with survivors being lied to by clergy and bishops directly. Like it's unbelievable. Like we're being very charitable and very kind in the way we're approaching this. I mean, it it's we're so understated for what we say on a regular basis for what these guys deserve.
True. I think even though the Catholic laity have really been grinded down by the hierarchy, I'm amazed how polite they are still to this day, even to a McElroy.
Yep.
Uh, and there's Jordan Peterson. They're all part of the same milieu. All of these people, Barron, Peterson, Dave Rubin, they're all part of this whole Daily Wire group. And here's what comes of it.
It's much
Right.
worse with Barron though, because these guys, Peterson, they're not claiming they're not a Catholic bishop. You know,
No,
they haven't given up their life to supposedly be a shepherd, and I think it's far worse in the case of a Bishop Barron than it is for Peterson or any of these guys.
oh, of
Well,
course not. But I'm making a case here, and I'm going to get to it. Oh, go ahead, Kristen.
no, I just wanted to quick point out because this is where in that interview too, he said he didn't want to focus on the pelvic issues. And when he came out to defend that, he did a whole post on it and again said like, guys, we can't focus on these pelvic issues. And all I could think of is, we had Pope John Paul II give all these addresses, those Wednesday Angelus addresses that came together this teaching as the theology of the body. And the crux of that whole teaching is that sex is not just a pelvic issue, that you have to have this integrity and that you speak with your body, you act with your body. So it's amazing to me that no one's picked up yet on the fact that Bishop Barron is like he is completely heretically speaking in regards to the theology of the body. He's completely undercutting John Paul II's whole teaching on that. And I think he's doing it knowingly because he had to have read those addresses. He's had to have studied it. He's had to have read Love and Responsibility. He's had to have read all of that. And he's finding a very he's using like a little scalpel to start to destroy and remove. He's doing his own little sex change on the teaching. And and it amazes me that, well, you can't call him out. I say it amazes me that nobody's called him out, but bingo, here's the problem. Behind the scenes, it's going to cost you if you're a theologian or someone in the church if you bring his errors to light.
Correct. And he don't want to talk about the pelvic issues because his brother bishops have pelvic issues.
No,
Yeah,
usually.
case in point, McElroy. Cardinal McElroy, a radical inclusion for LGBT people, women, and others in the Catholic Church. And the others, who are the others? Pedophiles. Here he is hanging with the LGBTQ, God loves you the way you are, Catholics in San Diego.
Yeah.
You know, if he's got empathy for these people, cool. I have empathy for these people. But you got to be very careful about how you approach this kind of ministry. You always welcome the sinner, but this is a perfect example. You don't put these people in positions of power and influence in the church. And that's exactly what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got a picture of me somewhere coming up. Oh no, EWTN Cardinals, cathedrals across America, massive installation. Why did they cover it?
I I don't understand, and I just think back to that moment with Mother Angelica
That's what I
during
was
World
just
Youth
thinking.
Day. I remember the moment where she went off on them because the Stations of the Cross in Denver were done with a woman playing Jesus, and she let loose and she spoke the truth. And the story of the genesis of EWTN and how it flourished and became so large under her and her proclaiming of the truth unabashedly and her like total love for Jesus Christ versus the bishops at the time trying to have their own station, and they just wasted millions and it fell flat. And here we are today, and basically she built it and the bishops took it, and now they've got their station, they've got their Catholic station.
Isn't this kind of an example of how it's just one big happy family? You know, Barron, EWTN, Peterson, everybody, they're all working together. They're all together in this stuff. Here's me. I won't put this up too long. But I've gone to the margins more than anybody else. And this is the excuse when they talk about people like the three of us. Well, we're bigots because we're not reaching out to these people. But I've gone to the margins, and you got to be careful when you do that. When you speak to a Dave Rubin, you got to be very careful the way you respond. And they're not. They're not, because they'd rather be popular than truthful, and that's a problem. So here's the National Catholic Register. Cardinal McElroy, Bishop Daniel Flores, and Bishop Robert Barron discuss polarization in the Catholic Church.
Yep.
Oh, Lord.
Joseph, something I always think of as we're going through this is, and James Martin talks a lot about, wanting to have love and empathy and support and all of that. I've been blocked by him on Twitter. So yeah, I get blocked too. Um, but it just hits me that we all want to know, like deep in the marrow of our bones, that we're unconditionally loved by God. And I'll just like use my experience as a parent, that your child your child really can feel at a profound level and understand how much you love them as a mother and as a father unconditionally. And it's usually at the moment when they've done something wrong and you didn't look away and act like it wasn't wrong. Like, you have to call sin sin,
Mm.
and you have to be honest about it for the person, the sinner, to then be able to look and see the gaze and see the love and know, yeah, I did something horrific and wrong, and they love me anyway. Like, it's an incredible moment that you can experience as a child. It's an incredible moment you can give it as a parent, and it's an incredible moment that we're able to give as Christians, and certainly these men as shepherds. But it can't happen if someone comes to you and you're like, it's fine, you didn't do anything wrong, it's okay. Well, and you rationalize it and you give all these reasons because deep down the person doesn't get to know, like, wow, you've seen me exposed in a horrible place and you still love me. Like, you're never giving that to them. And then as a result, the person never really knows the actual feeling of being unconditionally loved, which is the most incredible thing in the world. And I just, so I, it saddens me because that's the other part of this. They're denying people that. They're denying them the understanding of unconditional love.
But if Barron talked that way, like a good father or a good mother, he wouldn't be hanging with Jordan Peterson. He wouldn't be hanging with Spencer Clavin. So they got to talk about Jack and the Beanstalk, like Matt Fradd. That's what they have to do. Because if they really go in those difficult, have those difficult conversations, they're not going to be there in those positions of
They won't
power
have
and
the
influence.
platform.
Oh, not for a minute, they won't. No, they'll, they just won't. This was something interesting from that interview. Is it born of love? Bishop Barron said people should ask themselves, is it born of love? Is it born of a desire to will the good of the others? Is it born of love when he blocks people like me or when he sicks his employees on me? Is that born of love?
Is it born of love when two little babies are conceived in a petri dish and they're never
Ugh,
ever going to have a mom?
Yeah.
but he doesn't want to get on a Crusaders tank about that kind of stuff.
Well, they wouldn't be able to fund their Catholic Inc. if they did that. You know.
Oh, dear Lord. Anyway, were you guys aware of this? This was December 11th, 2024. The Atlantic did a huge interview and article on Bishop Barron.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, well, see, I'm not even Roman Catholic, but this like comes across my radar because I am sort of interested in him and how he relates to mainstream media, social media, however you want to call it, Jordan Peterson, the intellectual dark web, whatever. I'm interested in that whole sort of dynamic. And the Atlantic is interesting because it is a very liberal news. I think I've got pictures. It's owned by Lauren Jobs, who is the widow of Steve Jobs. She had connections with. Do you know who that is?
Yeah,
The Epstein's
Yeah,
girl.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
yeah.
So it's interesting that this Catholic prelate shows up in the Atlantic. December 11th, 2024. Do you remember the Molly Bull article from Time? It was following the 2020 election, and it was kind of like talking about how the Democrats sort of influenced social media and were pressuring Facebook and all these things. Do you remember that article?
I don't
And
remember, but I remember.
okay, it's kind of like they sort of laid their cards out and said this is how we influenced the 2020 presidential election. I thought this article was kind of interesting in the same way because it was kind of very revealing about the strategic sort of plan that Bishop Barron has in terms of social media. I'm surprised, number one, that he agreed to even do it because the Atlantic is so liberal, but he's got a big ego. So I guess he did it. So here's this was sort of an interesting snippet from, I think this was Facebook. Barron is scouting a church that embraces the internet as an evangelizing tool, refuses to assimilate to mainstream culture, oh God, and welcomes the young men who are beginning to outnumber women in the pews. Worthen writes, she's the author, is uncompromising presentation of the Christian story and his willingness to discuss it with polarizing figures such as Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro resonates especially among young men. According to Word on Fire data, more than 60% of Barron's viewers are men. But I just thought and it goes on, I just thought it was interesting that it's really talking about how that's a plan of his to influence these influential social media sites like the Daily Wire. So that's what, and he says it's for evangelization. I don't know that. I mean, I think it's rebranding the Catholic Church, and I think him as the face of that, I think he's been pretty successful, because if you see a Catholic face on social media, being interviewed by Ben Shapiro or whoever, who's that other guy? I don't know. There's a whole bunch of them. It's always Barron.
Yeah.
I call him the Kim Kardashian of the Catholic Church because he is everywhere,
Oh, he's
and
America's bishop.
I think he has been successful as the fixer of the Catholic Church in changing the conversation. Well, from pelvic issues, because pelvic issues are problematic for the Catholic Church because a number of bishops and priests have had it. So I think he's been successful. I think that article kind of exposed that
Who was
too.
the fixer before him, though? I mean, he stepped into the role. He stepped into the role quite brilliantly with his mind and his finesse. But who was the fixer before him?
What was it, McCarrick?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And was it Bernadine before that?
I think it was Bernardine, but I think McCarrick was kind of somewhat a contemporary of his. McCarrick's been the big fixer, and now stepping into those shoes is Bishop Barron. He's stepping into Cardinal McCarrick's shoes.
I never thought of it that way. Wow, that's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes. Barron's, this kind of freaked me out. So I'm reading this on my phone. Let me see. This felt kind of sinister. Barron's long-term goal is to grow the online communities affiliated with Word on Fire Institute, about 25,000 people, into a religious order
Mm-hmm.
that operates across the country. I'd like it to continue after me, he said. That's why I'd like it to be institutionalized, both at the lay level and the clerical level. Were you guys aware of that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Danger.
What's the charism? Usually
Yep.
you start an
Oh
order
my,
around a charism, right? What's the charism? Like, what are you doing that's so special you need an order for it,
gaslighting.
right? I mean, we have the Paulist media. We already like we've had stuff like that. So I'm not sure I understand what
He
the
he
charism is.
he envisions Word on Fire centers in major cities.
Yeah.
We already have parishes.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Brainwashing centers for gaslighting. I was not aware of this till I read the article. So here he is, Ben Shapiro, Spencer Clavin, who is quite a nefarious character. I don't know if you're aware of him.
I don't
Uh,
know.
okay, well he's Protestant, but he kind of styles himself as a sort of gay uh, biblical scholar, and he does a lot of like sort of I don't know, free association. I don't know what to call it, where he just talks about, especially he likes to talk about Paul's epistles, because those are the ones that mention homosexuality. And he says, oh, they don't condemn homosexual relations at all. Those were all about, master slave relations, all that stuff. And that's who he hangs out with, and that's who Barron hangs out with too. Here they are again. Here they are again.
Joseph, can I just jump in for a second and just bring something out as a woman? That if you had a bunch of prominent women and religious women taking like these photos like that, they look to me like graduation photos or engagement photos. Um, if you had a bunch of women doing this, like a bunch of sisters, and you know, prominent women like this, no men would take them seriously, would you?
No.
And I so I'm going to say this as a woman. I'm looking at this and I'm just like they look like five goobers who can't get dates to prom and they're all going together. Like it's just not impressive. I just want to put it out there, and I wish somebody would tell them like it doesn't play well, and they would probably be the first if, as they like to flex a lot of times, they like to wear shirts in their pictures that show that they have biceps. I mean, they're like 60-year-old men with biceps. Whoop-de-doo. Like if women did this, they'd be often, talked to about not being, you're not acting in a way in which it's serious. You're not dressing serious. This looks silly. And yet nobody's has this red flag going off that these men are not serious. Like
I
they're
do.
just not acting serious, right?
It's Jordan Peterson's version of The View.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
It's
for
cringe.
it is for me this doesn't nothing screaming a vibrant masculinity.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Here's the gospel. So all these
Oh.
guys hang out together, and this picture, I mean, Jonathan Pajot is supposed to be an expert on symbolism, but this picture right away, it just like screamed Da Vinci's The Last Supper. It just is so creepy, just especially with this placement of the arch and Jordan Peterson right here, where Christ would have been, and here's the apostles. It's very bizarre. And then here is uh, uh, the guy we're talking about, Bishop Barron, and then all these other Dennis Prager, who's okay with AI generated child porn for pedophiles.
Mm.
Did you guys read that interview?
No. Oh gosh.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. Well, I didn't either until he said he thought it was cool. But I couldn't sit through much of these podcasts that they've done, but it's just kind of like Peterson going off on stuff, and they all just sit there and nod their head.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. But Peterson is their meal ticket, and I mean, Barron knows it. He really needs him in order to have these entryways into the social media because Peterson is very influential. He's got a huge following. Nobody comes close.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And Jordan Peterson, I think is we're watching his twisty journey that I hope ends up
Today,
embracing truth. Yeah, I really do. I hope it ends where I think it will. And I hope that for him, because a real deep relationship with Jesus Christ and sacramental one is one. I mean, it's life changing.
but but if Bishop Barron is Peterson's conduit into the Catholic Church, that's not a good sign. Because I actually liked Jordan Peterson quite a bit. And then when I saw him started hanging out with Bishop Barron, I was like, that's not good.
Well, he's not gonna. Yes, no, I'm with you. I just wonder the
Well,
wisdom of a bishop in the Catholic Church so publicly just being there because I don't feel like he's accompanying him. I mean, I'm a convert, and when you're going through a process, just even not formally, I had Catholics and I had priests share teachings with me and guide me and direct me and point me in good directions. And because we're watching this so publicly with Jordan Peterson, we're also getting to see publicly that Bishop Barron isn't doing that.
He did as good a job as he did with Dave Rubin because he sat back and just kind of let things slide with Dave Rubin, and then a couple of years later, Dave Rubin is buying test tube babies. So that's how good it went.
and
And
I can't imagine that Jordan Peterson, and I'm in the same camp with you, Joseph, on this. Like I think highly of some of the things that Peterson has put out. Like just I thought it was excellent. But I can't imagine that he knows the wolf in sheep's clothing that he's sitting next to in that photo. I don't think so. I can't even imagine. I think Barron is just riding the coattails of Peterson to get whatever it is he wants. I can't put Peterson, at least me personally, in that category because I don't think he'd put up with it. Him riding coattails to get these kind of this kind of media, to help his empire that he's building.
They hitched their wagon to his star, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
don't know, but that's what I think.
here he is more. The church can save our country. The church can't stop its own priests from keeping their hands out of the altar boy's pants. How is it going to save the country? Don't talk to this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
That's right.
But that's part of it. I think that's part of his strategy, though, because he is the
Ugh.
prominent guy in the church right now that is taking the spotlight off of the individuals, the actual bishops, and
His
and
brother priests.
and he's word salading his theology in order to make it the system. I mean, he said it over and over. I watched some interviews recently that he had done, or I watched them recently, interviews in the past that he had done, and he just ducks this. Like, he doesn't even admit that he knew about McCarrick. He infers it by kind of shifting it to somebody else. In the whole report that came out, the McCarrick report that took 2 years or whatever, he totally ducks that.
Well, this is what is wrong with the church. If I was there, I would say, you know what's wrong with the church? You, Bishop Barron.
Yep.
You're what's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I keep thinking, though, I just want to interject again. Like, just seeing these images and seeing his face all the time on television talking about these things. I'm not suggesting that he abuses and gropes seminarians. He obviously was an enabler of it, as were so many, because they knew this was going on with McCarrick.
Yeah.
And he was a rector of a seminary, Bishop Barron, so he should have been
Ugh.
really like heightened, and really offended by that and done something. That being said, and I'm not suggesting that he's abused children like McCarrick did, and raped and sodomized them and did things to them in confession like McCarrick did.
Did he know about it?
But I don't know if he knew at the time. He's never responded in any way that I would expect a man to respond when you hear these things, and you have a platform and you have the power, and you're a bishop of the Catholic Church. He hasn't responded the way he should. But what I will compare him to with Cardinal McCarrick, former Cardinal McCarrick, is he goes out now like the front man. This is, if we recall, McCarrick was on Meet the Press. He's kind of the point man here, and he's also untouchable. Like, the same way in the church, if we look back at the climate with Cardinal McCarrick, you couldn't criticize him, could you? It was going to cost you, apparently. You couldn't criticize him. You couldn't say anything about him. A lot was put up with. People rolled their eyes, but he couldn't be criticized. There was never anything written in mainstream media or mainstream Catholic media that even suggested that there was a problem with Cardinal McCarrick, this prince of the church. And I feel like Bishop Barron has the same untouchable platform, and that in of itself is a problem.
Yeah.
What about that uh, that Zoom meeting he had with McElroy? Now, I don't know who set that up. If Gloria Purvis called and said, "Hey, I'm going to set this up," Barron should have said, if he's a decent human being. McElroy, there's a lot of survivors that are saying a lot about this guy. And I think maybe I won't include myself in this. But you can't be a decent human being in the hierarchy because you end up like a Strickland. You end up like a Bishop Strickland.
But he also doesn't believe then in what he preaches about the Mass and the Eucharist, because the satanic ritual abuse that Rachel had to endure by a priest, that Bishop McElroy covered up and then was willing to put that priest back into parishes to potentially do the same thing to other women, mocking satanically the Mass and our Eucharist. You can't believe what you're preaching, and he can have as many glossy campaigns as he wants, but you can't believe it if you're willing to cover that, if
Yeah.
you're not willing to call that guy out at the very least. And you put up the thing about the Gospels where it's like a Da Vinci Last Supper setting, and Bishop Barron had no problem talking about what happened in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics in Paris.
Exactly.
He had no problem talking about that
Yep.
and the mocking. Yet you're putting up here, and everybody should look at it. He's willing to be on a podcast with McElroy, who's willing to cover up satanic ritual abuse and put somebody back into ministry that could then do it again to other people. Like, what is more offensive?
Yeah. And this was the problem that I had with Barron, because people really pushed back against me when I made a pretty big fuss over what was going on at the LA Rec in terms of grooming children and recommending that children have sex change surgeries. And they were like, well, Barron, he's not in charge of the Diocese of LA. He's an auxiliary, which is true. But I said, and I had conversations with priests about this in LA. I said, but he's here. He's the headline speaker. I said, when he does that, that sends a message. And actually, at one of the last LA Recs I went to, I just totally had it. So I kind of leaflet the place with a bunch of other people, and we were just handing out leaflets about what was being said and what was being taught. And one guy came up to me, very earnest, very a good guy, good Catholic guy, and he said, "Wait, but Bishop Barron is speaking here. This can't be taking place." What's my answer to that? I don't know. Bishop Barron is a horrible person because he allows us to go on. I guess that's what I'm saying. But I'm circling back, sorry. But this is the same impression that this gives. He sits down and has this conversation with McElroy, not about abuse at all. It's about how there's the polarization in Catholic discourse, back to the laity. That gives McElroy sort of imprimatur. He's giving that to him. Ay, ay, ay. The Gospels. Bishop Barron presents Father Joseph Fessio. This is what they do. They cover for each other. I have to say, I've met Father Fessio a couple of times here in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. I'm not going to say anything bad about him. One of the most unpleasant people I've ever encountered in my
I
life.
I met him on the bus to jail in Northern California. I was not yet Catholic. He gave me my first rosary and talked to me about the rosary.
Okay.
And
I'm glad you
actually,
had a good experience.
I really did, but that's why this one breaks my heart. Um, he was wonderful. He was kind. I ended up getting to have lunch with him and other people when it was our court date, and just sat there and heard these incredibly vibrant intellectual discussions taking place. Um, and I'm so sad, but I'm sad at his alliance with Bishop Barron, even though I don't know. I get maybe they think they're evangelizing, but they're really not. His one-on-one with me, I think, was more profound than just listening to a video. But I'm also sad because he started Ignatius Press, which was wonderful at the time, and it started in a basement, and it was really countercultural in the church when he started it. And it really grew because he was a student of Cardinal Ratzinger, doctoral student, and he published Cardinal Ratzinger's works. And then when Cardinal Ratzinger became Pope Benedict, that really made Ignatius Press prominent. And they now run, they have books with Cardinal Pell, and he's trying to
Exactly.
publish all these things. And so my heartbreak started earlier than this. And I don't know if it's that people are trapped almost too much in their mind and in their intellect and are losing the heart that and I'll just bring it as a mother. I can keep there's so many neat things I can do in my home, can be decorated beautifully, and I can have this incredible appearance and a life that like runs seamlessly, but at the end, if I don't have like that love, and I haven't done the hard work with my children and my husband, and like what do I really have? And I feel like there's a loss of the heart. It reminds me of C.S. Lewis, an abolition of men, abolition of men, men without chest. Like you have this huge head, this intellect, but there's like no chest there. There's no heart. And that's what this picture says to me.
Were you aware of Festio's involvement in the Donald McGuire case?
Yes, I started researching, and again, yes, he he wanted it hushed up and dealt with internally, in house. They like to say, deal with it in house.
While family members considered reporting the abuse to secular authorities, Festio urged them to stay quiet until he could confer with Jesuit higher ups.
Yeah. Rather than, I mean, this was a faithful family, and that's why their son had this access, or that's why Father McGuire had access to their son, and to rape him and abuse him.
Also via Mother Teresa.
Well, he said he was Mother Teresa's spiritual director. Although I'm going to put this out there because it used to be you'd like, oh gosh, he was Mother Teresa's spiritual director. But I can't tell you how many priests I've met through the years that said they were her special spiritual director.
But she did defend him personally. She did do that. She vouched for him.
Sure. And they arranged to have it. I'm not even defending her. I think they used people, and they used, and unfortunately Father Fessio used his trust and his position
Yeah.
to protect a Father McGuire, not to protect the child, and not to have the knee jerk reaction where, rather than telling the family hold off, it might be hold off because I'm going to go beat him up. I get that, but hold off so I can protect him.
Yeah.
I
And
don't.
I didn't use this to beat up on Father Fessio. His
Sure.
history is what it is, but it's an example of how they cover for each other and
Mhm.
how they present each other in the best possible light. Because
It,
I'm sure Barron didn't bring up the McGuire case.
of course not. Of course not. They're. It's not a true reality that they're living in and that they're preaching in.
Nope.
Joseph, have you had a chance to watch any of Bishop Barron's interviews, even though he got a bunch of softball questions around after the McCarrick story broke? Have you gotten to see like
I did.
how?
I did.
Okay, you did. Okay, because I'm
But
just curious if you see the same thing
the
that. Go ahead.
the only one is the Max Friedman one, which is the one I'm familiar with. Because I try to go to secular sources, not
Okay,
Catholic.
Lex Friedman. I don't know that I've
Lex,
seen
I don't
that
think I
one.
did
oh,
either.
say Lex Friedman. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Lex Friedman.
And he asked him point blank, and Barron gave a very evasive answer.
Okay,
He dressed it for probably a minute and a half, and then he pivoted to celibacy, to priestly celibacy. He's
mm.
very smart. He's very savvy, media savvy, and he knows how to pivot, and he did. And Lex Friedman did not follow up. He
Well,
didn't.
the ones I saw were actually internally to the Word on Fire, his
Oh,
organization.
please.
No, but it's very telling though, because
Okay, good.
he treats the abuse in his delivery and his mannerism like it was a traffic violation.
Yeah.
Like the abuse and the destruction of lives was like literally as menial as a traffic violation as he's talking. You know, when he talks about something dreadful happened. Uh, I just didn't know if you saw that too. Like it
I
drives
did.
me nuts when I hear him talk about the abuse scandal.
Now, here's how they're presenting everybody. Look at smiling, happy faces, Bishop Barron, Jordan Peterson, he's not even Catholic. Check this out. Is this creepy or what?
Oh gosh.
Based and Barron pilled.
Yeah.
This is from this year, January 9th, 2025. It got 13,000 views.
But Word on Fire put that up?
No, the
No.
art of purpose. I don't know
Art.
who that is. So
It's but it's that, that's the other thing that no one like. I'm in my 50s, my husband and I, and so we're around a lot of people in their 50s and 60s. That's kind of our peer group now, right? And our peer group, like men in our peer group, they may try to stay healthy, but they're not, like, there's a problem if they're showing themselves in short sleeves all the time with their muscle body looking like that is just not, it's not appealing, it's not masculine. Like there's a problem there. I don't know why he fixates on that.
what is based in Barron pill? Do you speak at conferences where they groom kids and recommend that mentally ill children have sex change surgeries? Is that based in Barron pill?
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's not.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think they think he's cool, but he's not.
This is Catholic Inc.
Yeah.
I don't know who this appeals to, but it appeals to a lot of people because it's very popular. This is Hallow.
Okay. Okay.
This is where everybody got the memo. Sachin Jose, this is one of the worst accounts on Twitter. It's a Vatican bot. He blocked me a long time ago. Not a nice person. We're so back. Notre Dame Cathedral has been restored. This was the "we're so back" memo from the Vatican. Now
Oh,
watch what happens. Matt Fradd, oh, we're so back. They all start repeating it.
I,
Are we back? We're so back. These are all big Catholic influencers on Twitter. I don't know if you.
But are the average? Is the average? We still haven't seen justice from the abuse. We still haven't seen it in any fashion.
It
Like it just
doesn't matter. We're back.
no
it just
repentance,
it just
right?
mm.
No repentance. Where is that even in the gospel? We're so back. We're so back. Is that what they said, when
It's
Jesus
propaganda. It's
resurrected?
propaganda.
Like, this is ridiculous.
I cut a very strong line between because Paul and Kristen are Catholics. I got a very strong line between you and these Catholic Inc. people that I just showed, because there's a difference between the Catholics who are remaining in the church, trying to do the best they can, trying to keep their faith, loving God, being truthful, trying to protect the innocent. And these people who are just it's just propaganda. That's all they're doing. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the Biden people during the 2024 campaign, how they all had these slogans. Everything's okay. Biden is sharp as a tack, and the economy is great. It's like the opposite of everything you see is what they declare. It's demonic.
Well, you know what it reminds me of is The
But when you
Secret.
when you close down just for that picture, Joseph, when you close down half your parishes, I mean, when they're showing the difference in numbers between '04 and 24, I mean,
Yeah,
half
they
our parishes
consolidate.
don't even exist anymore. They're not even physically there anymore.
No, I think this is based in that Oprah Winfrey, The Secret. I think it has actually permeated into the church and the culture more than we realize. And it's that idea, like, visualize. If you want this, visualize it. If you want to be wealthy, imagine yourself wealthy. Keep thinking, and then it will happen, and then it will happen. And I think this is kind of like that kind of secret idea, what that's made its way into the influencer part of the Catholic Church, that if we just imagine it and visualize it and say it enough, it's just going to happen. And again, that's, it's not
It's
a
like
part of our faith.
it's like the Biden people saying there's no problem at the border. There's no
Yeah,
problem. It's like these people, there's no problem in the Catholic Church. It's just back, and you're based in Barron pilled.
that's right.
Nobody has the riz like the Catholic Church. I don't know what this woman is doing. I just don't. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's not honest. Be Catholic. Great. Be Catholic. Be proud of being Catholic, but don't lie and don't just push out this propaganda, especially about Pope Francis. My God.
Well, but it's not, and the other thing is, it's not a club. I always say this, like your faith, I'm not part of a cause and I'm not part of a club because trust me, if this were just a club, I don't want to be with these people in my club. I wouldn't pick this club. Um, it's something, it's got to be something deeper. And you know, it makes me think of how you're saying all these. Remember, you were talking about how Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Peugeot and Bishop Barron and Spencer Clavin and like they're all together in lockstep. They're all together. And I just feel like, you know, it makes me think of water. It's easy to all stay together when you're in something shallow. It is much harder to stay together when you're out swimming deep, deep. And it's just something very shallow,
It
you
is.
know.
Someday Pope Francis will be canonized and his haters will pretend like they always loved him.
Oh gosh. Well, oh gosh. Oh, that would be a rough one. That would be a real rough one.
Oh, this is now here's reality. For every 100 Catholics who enter the church, 840 leave. Is this we're so back?
But
This is
wait a minute,
we're
I thought Word on Fire. I thought the fruits of that we're changing that.
but we're
How long
back,
has that been
man.
around? 10,
We're
20,
ba
30
we're
years?
ba we're based in
Decade.
Barronpill, based in Barronpill.
Not to mention those people that have left. Like,
Me.
do you, well, and where's the care for them? And and if people were to come back, what's the church? Is it a church that's going to embrace and care and no longer hurt?
Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And let me tell you, I've left two, and this is nothing against you guys. I love you guys. I've left two cults in my life, the gay one and the Catholic one. The gay one was pretty rough. I have to say the Catholic one was a lot worse. The it was bad. It was bad the way people continue to treat me. It's vicious. It is vicious. And I wrote a whole column how Catholics used to like really be very kind to me and say, "Oh, look what he overcame. He overcame this and overcame that and came back to the Catholic Church and he's living a good life." And when I left the Catholic Church, I was like a homo again.
But
Well,
this
let
is,
me just share one
sure.
thing real quick, Joe, because here's I can't get off this because every time I hear the word evangelization, it just it's like something going up the back of my neck. It just infuriates me because here's what somebody that knows what's going on and somebody that cares would have how they would evangelize now. So if you let's say you ran into somebody and we're supposed to um, you know be ready in the moment to share your faith. So if I'm trying to evangelize somebody or share the faith and bring them into the church, here's what has to go through your mind. All right, well, you can go to this parish as long as this priest is there because I know your children won't be in danger. Yeah, you can't. And then what about this, so and so parish? Well, you can't go there because, his boyfriend is the this and the that. And then, so that's evangelization right now in the church, if you're being honest. And it infuriates me where we're at right now. At least now, this is in our diocese, and I'm sure this is
Hmm.
goes across the entire country. But in our diocese, that's how you have to how you would have to evangelize. Don't go to this parish because this happened there, or you know what, this guy was caught doing this, and this guy was lived with this guy, and he walked in on a. These are the stories that we know. This guy walked in on somebody being abused, turned around and walked out and did nothing. Like, is this where you want your children? Is this where you want your family? And it literally disgusts me what's going on, at least that what I know of in our diocese.
Hmm.
But this is Barron. Can I just say
And Barron knows all this.
this is
Like Barron knows
based
all of this.
Barron pilled evangelization. It's an idea that people are like poker chips to be won, and then others can be disposed of. And you even hear, though, the idea with Our Lady Guadalupe, and I love that apparition, and I love the story around it, and I love Our Lady Guadalupe, and I have a devotion to her. But sometimes you hear it spoken of, oh, Our Lady converted all these people, all the Indians over in Mexico, and we gained all these people in the church at the same time as we lost all these people in Europe to the Protestant Reformation. Somehow, and I think it's great. I love that Our Lady converted all these people in Mexico. I just am not going to act like, okay, so, it kind of balances out on the balance sheet, and who cares about the people in Europe? And I think that's, that there's definitely, when somebody leaves the church, you're right. It's not like, wow, like this person left and I'm so sad. And I'm so sad, like what caused the person to leave? Like, and I even, as you've heard me on, not heard me, seen me tweet on Twitter several times now, I, I I think, and some people who have left the church, I don't know if they leave so much as they're pushed out. Like, there's really a feeling, do you even want these people in the church?
Yeah.
No, no. The in 2018, well, see, the difference is you and Paul are willing to criticize the stuff that's going on, and people within the church won't do that. I found that out in 2018 because I was in Philly at the Courage conference, the last one I went to, because I left the church that year. At least I made the decision, and that was the summer of 2018 when James Martin was just chewing the scenery. He was everywhere. He came out with his book. It was crazy with all the gay Catholic stuff. And I showed up at that conference, and there were a lot of parents there with gay kids, and they all kind of came up to me and said, "Oh, are you speaking? Are you speaking?" I said, "Are you kidding? They won't let me scrub the toilet at this conference." So, and they were all so confused because of what was going on with Martin, and they wouldn't discuss it. And Father Gerald Murray was there, and he did talk about it, to his credit, but he was the only one. And I said, why won't they? Because they won't speak up against a Catholic priest, because he's a Catholic priest. They won't do it. But you got, and you talked about that with your analogy, Kristen, with your own kids. You got to call it out. I don't care if it's in your own family, if it's in house. You have to, and they wouldn't do it. I left that conference so discouraged. I went, these poor people came to this thing trying to figure out what was right and wrong, and they didn't get any help.
That's right.
And it was too bad. And it was a big fail on the Catholic Church's part. I think mainly because they just won't, a priest won't criticize a fellow priest. They won't do it if they're abusing an altar boy, and they won't do it if they're getting up in the pulpit and talking about all this gay nonsense. They just won't do it. There's a code of silence there, and it covers a lot of bases, not just the moral stuff, but it covers this theological stuff as well. Barron called James Martin winsome. That's as critical as he got of him.
I'm so tired too. I'm going to just say it. Like, I'm just done with his words too. Winsome. Like that. What a stupid, like, oh my gosh. He has to like kind of show, and I think this is another, criticism of the church today, the culture in it. I've heard many times people say like Bishop Barron is our best and our brightest.
Oh, Lord
I have
forbid.
heard that. I can't even tell you. I mean, he's
You're in trouble.
absolutely,
You're in trouble.
he's brilliant. He's brilliant is what I've heard. Um, and you can, be intellectually really bright, and I'm sure he is, and he speaks all these languages, and his resume is like so impressive, but there's a lack of wisdom there. And for some reason, we are, and I fell into this, so I understand it. We are we just give so much deference to priests who are bright, and it's like, and it's just enculturated in this church. Do you know, like, Father Al Liberatori, the priest in the Diocese of Scranton that cost the diocese $3 million. He was the
Hmm.
vocation director. He had raped and abused a 16-year-old boy, um, harassed seminarians, harassed a director of youth activities. I mean, it goes on and on. They had to remove him from seminary grounds because young boys doing a field trip at the seminary got to see him getting massages from seminarians in a room.
And a
So,
towel.
yeah. So they had to remove him from seminary grounds, but obviously keep him in parishes. Um, I mean, it goes on and on, the Liberatori case. But when he was finally arrested, there was a collection that went around. I was told this by a priest in our diocese, and he was approached to give money to his legal defense. And he said, "Why would I do that?" And the comment was, "Because he's our best and our brightest we have." And they had put so much money into him, and he
Oh,
didn't
Lord.
have the normal seminary training, and he had gone to the Louvain, and he was the doctoral student of Avery Dulles, Cardinal Dulles. And, he was so even in that case, you had this guy for years doing despicable things that everyone knew about, including my bishop. Nobody was warned, nobody was protected. And when he's arrested, it's, what's happening to our best and our brightest guy. They were so enamored with his theological insight and his intellectual abilities. Yet the man's so stupid that he can't even close a door in a seminary when he's getting massages from his seminarians so that children don't see. So I feel like Bishop Barron is kind of like gets a lot of deference, partly because we've just decided to king him as the best and the brightest the church has today.
Mhm. The data indicates that for every one person received in the Catholic Church, another 8.5 individuals leave the faith either altogether or for another worship tradition. Now, this was kind of, I'm sorry, you guys, we've been here for a while. That was kind of my lead in to the main topic. Do you guys still have time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because this is my main topic.
Yeah. That's what we came here for.
Okay. That
I
was
haven't even begun.
that was the lead in.
We're not
Okay.
even warmed up yet.